this is Deborah Carmona. We are going to make characters for a nativity scene. In my previous video that I posted last week, I showed you how to prepare the body forms from dish soap bottles. If you haven't seen that, you may want to watch that first if you plan to do this project for yourself. I will be posting another video for what to do if you can't find the right shape soap bottles, and what you could do if you can't find the egg shapes. Other tools you need: fabric scissors. We're going to be cutting fabric, so you want to do all your cutting first when everything is clean and dry. You might need needles and thread. Plus, we need lots of fabric. Fabrics to cover our little people for whatever colors you want. Now you've got two choices. You can pick colors that you want for them, or it doesn't matter what color choices. Once you have it all draped and once it's dried in this solution, it's going to hold the shape that you create. You let it dry for a day or two, and then you could spray paint the whole thing gold, and that can look pretty. And I'll show you what that looks like, because that's what we're doing at our church. I got together with a bunch of ladies from the church, and they had so much fun making these. And I tried to get the bottles ready like this so that they've got it looks like a body form. And I gave them a pile of fabric, and they created different characters. And we made 5 sets of a complete nativity scene. And me and some other ladies got together and created some animals. I created the patterns and showed them how to make them, and they helped me to get them done. And so we created 5 different nativity sets using these materials. Let's get into it. I did kind of work out a pattern. This would be, I got it kind of combined. This is the shape of the sleeve. This is the shape of just the front tunic, and it wraps around the back. And the paper's not big enough, so you have to add an inch that way, and add an inch this way, and add an inch that way. That's just to cover the front, like the undershirt, the undergarment, or the tunic. And then this, the red, you cut this on the folds, so you have a piece that looks like, I'll show you what it looks like. I'm going to hold it upside down. It looks like this. And let me show you how that kind of goes on. So like this is the back part, and then this slot, it comes up here. It's like a vest type, and this will be, it's going to be glued, so it goes over the shoulders, and that way you have a vest. That's how that works. So the piece, the pattern piece, looks like, okay, with a little slot cut right there, and you can see that it practically takes up a regular typing sheet. It's almost the whole thing, so it's almost the whole full length. So you can just maybe a 3/4 inch it does not use. And then I want to angle the shoulder, and this is the front, okay, and then cut off this corner, cut a little dip for the neck, and that's how you create the pattern for. So I used this as a pattern to cut out all of the shepherd's overcoat or vest, and you have the option. You can have it full length, you can cut it medium, or you can cut it short, because they already are going to have this tunic that's going to cover the bottom all the way around. And I measured this by taking my paper and going, see, will it go all the way around the bottle? Yeah, just barely, but you need an overlap. So that's why I have added an extra inch this way and that way, which is more than enough. You could probably just add like a 1/2 inch both ways, but the length might be a little short. See, the length might be short, so that's why I added extra inch here. That way you can put a hem in it if you want. So this is just a regular typing sheet. And I'm just putting the patterns on this one sheet, just to keep it all together. I know I'm not going to cut them out. I cut out one out of fabric and then use that as a guide to cut out any other ones that I need to cut out. So you could take the time to go through and cut everything out, because you don't want to, once you get to the sticky messy part, you don't want to have that in combination with your fabric scissors and cutting. So I'm getting everything cut out and everything planned before, and everything goes in a bag. Now this I have not, this is just the colors, fabrics that I want to use for the Wiseman costume, but I haven't cut these out yet, so they're in a big gallon bag because I had to go to bed. But once I get everything cut out, it just fits in a regular sandwich size Ziploc bag. This is a shepherd. I haven't got the undershirt, but I have the vest and the sleeves done, and shepherd and Joseph. So all the bags are ready. So if you're a mom doing this with your family, you take the time and to kind of plan this out, you have it ready to go. And all of the figures are ready to go. So first thing we need to do is to choose our fabrics. I am using leftover scraps from previous costume projects that I have done. I made small piles of different coordinating fabrics to create each costume. I used plaids for Joseph and the shepherds. We'll be using a lot of white fabric for the tunics and head coverings. You could make the tunics whatever color you choose. I had some green velvet left over, so I decided to use that for Mary's cape. I chose a textured white fabric for her dress. The wise men can have the fancier fabric since they come from other countries. I assume that they were rich because they brought expensive gifts like gold, frankincense, and myrrh. If you plan to spray paint the characters all one color, such as all white or silver or all gold, the colors of your fabrics won't matter at all. But the textures will show up through the paint, so you want to consider texture. For the wise men, just pin on some fabrics, and I have scraps, and their closing can be a little bit different. Right here I want to combine these three fabrics, and for a cape I just cut a hole in what's going to be the robe. I mean, they can have different fashions because they're wise men, and I'll be able to drape this. Okay, that might be a little too long, so I think I'll round that off. I did not do that good. Okay. Now I already got the sleeves cut out, and they're in the bag, which will be of the same fabric. And I want to use a little bit of this. Maybe I might do a little trim of that on the sleeves as well, just so I can have this not just in one place, but another place as well. Now I gotta figure out some sort of headgear. So I cut my pieces and kind of pin it together to figure out what I'm going to use, just to get an idea of how I can put together this outfit. Now I may cut these off, I may not have them crisscross around because I don't want them to show up there, but I'm going to leave it on there for now. So these are the pieces I'll be using, and I may take this to the sewing machine and sew that edge down so it's a finished edge. But this part, I don't think will be seen. And this I actually put two pieces together. I'm going to actually sew those together so that kind of creates a nice little back. Just cover anything that doesn't show up right. And then this little triangular piece, that's just to hide that, which I could actually do that in white for all of the characters. Just take a triangular piece, fold it over, and that'll hide that. And see, I didn't have enough, so it's just draped. See this? I want to hide that. So it's just pieces to create but I have a plan. So I have all the pieces, and yeah, they're just scraps. So that's everything for this Wiseman except for his headgear, which I haven't figured out anybody's headgear yet. So I'm just putting everything in a bag. Once I figure out that this is the fabric, all the fabric needed to create his outfit. Next session, get everything cut out, everything planned before we start with the draping of the fabric. So this could be done one day, and then the next day you can do the draping. I have everything cut out. We're ready to start putting together the outfits. Joseph and Mary. Now I am going to sew her cape because I'm making her a special cape. So I'm going to do a little bit of sewing for that. And then we have the shepherds. And I did sew the sleeves already for shepherds. There's just going to be a little bit of sewing. With this Wiseman, I'm going to have to do a little trim work on the vest. So that I'm going to go to the sewing machine and do those parts before I get to the sticky, messy part. After hemming all the white sleeves, I lined up the sleeves and sewed the inner seam without cutting the thread in between. When I finish one sleeve, I just take a stitch or two and then start sewing the next sleeve. This is for the tip, which saves time and thread. When they're done, you separate them with a little snip of your scissors. One little sewing tip. I like to do all of my sewing of the same color. Do like I'm doing all my whites, and then when I have to change my thread, then I will work with all my golds or all my burgundy if I'm going to use burgundy. So that way I don't have to keep switching out the threads. This is our tunic. Determine which side is the right side. Bring the right sides together in the back and sew down the back center seam. Flip right side out. Back seam is sewn. Now we just need to put a hem around the bottom so that we have a nice even edge. Finger press your back seam. Fold over twice. Try to keep it very small, approximately 1/4 inch or less. Then sew around from the inside of the tunic. It uses up about 1/2 inch of the fabric. We're only sewing the back seam and the hem. The rest of it will be glued, so we don't have to worry about the raw edges. The bottle will just slip inside like a sleeve. That way, if you're working with children, this will make it easier for them. The fabrics can be draped without sewing anything, but it is more challenging, especially the sleeves. And I have a future project where I want to do a tree topper, and it doesn't have any sewing at all. But it's a similar technique as to what we're doing with these characters. Here I am sewing a small sash for a Wiseman. I used a small dowel to help turn the fabric inside out. This fabric frays so easily, so I had to have finished edges. I finish it off with top stitching all the way around. For this Wiseman vest, robe, or whatever you want to call it, or coat, whatever you want to call it, I wanted it to have a little trim on the front opening edge. So I sew right side of the trim color to the wrong side of the robe. That's right side to wrong side. Then I trim the seam. When I fold it over to the right side, I tuck under the raw edge and sew with my stitches on top. This gives me a narrow edge of trim for that little bit of color that I wanted to pull this costume together, combining the burgundy and the gold. And I'm using gold thread still. The gold paisley fabric was actually a sheet that I picked up at a thrift store. Part of the sheet is worn, but the rest of the fabric is in good shape, and it had a really nice design. I love paisleys, and it's very classic looking. I knew that I could use it for a costume somewhere, and I have used it before. The other fabrics were left over from previous costumes that I have made, because I like to make costumes. For the sleeves, for this Wiseman, I am applying the same trim in the same manner as I did for the robe. If you plan to add any kind of trim to the sleeves, do it before you sew the inner seam of the sleeve. When making tiny clothes, such as doll clothes, the procedure for sewing is different than sewing human clothes because the space you have to work with is very limiting. His robe has burgundy accents for the front opening. That's all I'm going to sew, just that much. Well, I did fold over the sleeve opening since this robe will be sleeveless. I only folded it over one time. This part will be mostly unseen, so that will be enough to give the front side a little more finished edge. I was more concerned where it might be open a bit, and that's where I wanted to have cleaner edges. I still have not ironed this fabric, but I don't need to, because when we apply the fabric stiffener, it will weight it down and the wrinkles will be reshaped. I wanted a stand-up collar for this Wiseman. I top stitch on the outside of the collar, which will keep the raw edges pointed downward and help the collar to stand up. This is a cape for another Wiseman. The black fabric wants to curl, so I stabilized it by adding a cape lining, and I think the gold and the black, it also helped to pull the costume together by having two different colors in the contrast. I sew right sides together all the way around, leaving an opening so that I can turn it inside out. To finish off, I top stitch all the way around, including the opening. But this will come around and come together like that for a cape. The capes and one sash are the only completely sewn items for clothing. Everything else has raw edges that will be glued in assembly. Oh yeah, one more. This is a shorter cape, more like a shawl in its shape for another Wiseman, so I needed to finish it off by sewing two pieces of fabric together and turning it. This sequin fabric is a pain to sew with because the sequins are glued on and the glue gums up the sewing machine needle. I had to stop every now and then and clean my needle. I try to avoid sewing with any gummed materials. All of our fabrics are now ready to start dressing the characters. In my next video, I will show you how we use a fabric stiffening formula to drape the fabrics on the body forms to dress the nativity characters. The content for this project was too much to be included in just one video, so I decided to make a short series of videos to share the specific details on how to do this project. You will find all the videos on my playlist for Christmas activities. Look for future uploads to see the rest of the project. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you will receive the notices when I post the videos. Thanks for watching.